last night I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, it's like I'm running my own residential care home here because I'm running back and forth. I've got Mark, my husband, needing help, Chris needing help because he's trying to get up. And I'm like, no, keep your foot elevated because we want to make sure the swelling goes down and let's just pray that it's only a sprain, nothing worse. And so he's needing this, Mark's needing that. And I look over at my dog and she starts limping. And I'm like, no, too much. The dog cannot be limping. Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Well, hello, and welcome to Aging in Style. Sometimes I decide on something I want to talk about because something has happened in my life, either just recently or just leading up to doing this podcast. And you know what? Sometimes I will have a totally different show in mind and then just change my mind because I feel something on my heart that strongly felt that I need to share it with y'all. So that's what happened today. I was going to talk about something else. And what I decided, simply because the last couple of days have been a little bit crazy in my household, I decided to talk about the effects of caregiver stress on your body and how to relieve or manage it. And a lot of people out there are caregivers, including myself. If you listen to the podcast, you know that I am the primary caregiver for my husband, Mark, who had 4 strokes Christmas Day 2022. He is pretty severely disabled. He is in a wheelchair, can walk a little bit with a cane, and has severe apraxia and aphasia, which makes communication kind of difficult, although we've kind of have our own language, and somehow I do figure out most of what he's saying, but there are times that he becomes very frustrated, I become frustrated, and it's just, we do the best we can, but being a caregiver is not easy. So I want to kind of set the tone with, just kind of laying that out that I am a caregiver. So if you are a caregiver, join in, my friends, let's hold hands, and I've got you. I understand what you're going through. So what led me to want to talk about this and the stress involved is that, today is it's a Tuesday. On Saturday night, my son, who I talk about a lot, he's 28. He's a fantastic young man. He lives with us. He helps me take care of his dad. He's going to school. He works and he helps me. And we also have other caregivers that kind of like am cobbling together my whole little caregiving group. I have one. I just added a second one to help out. So, I have, my plan A, plan B, plan C, just always trying to be organized because I work full time and I do not have the luxury of being able to not work. And not to mention, I love working. I love what I do. I'm only 60. I am, in my eyes, a very young 60, and I don't want to retire. So what happened Saturday is my son was walking to his car and it was night, and the sidewalk he was on was very kind of uneven and broken up, and he tripped and he fell just right that he really hurt his ankle, and it's all swollen up, and there was all kinds of drama happening with this because he was in downtown Dallas. The next day we were having a birthday party for my daughter who was turning 22. Chris couldn't drive his car because it was his right foot. And we had to Uber into Dallas, get his car, bring it home. It was just craziness. Just one of those stories that you're like, are you kidding me? And just trying to stay calm, in that moment. But anyhow, long story short, I took him Monday because his ankle was so swollen and his foot looked terrible. And I took him in, had an x-ray, definitely a very bad sprain, possibly a hairline fracture, but we won't know until the swelling goes down. So they put him in a boot and on crutches. He used to keep it iced, elevated, all the stuff. And so he's my help. So last night, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, it's like I'm running my own residential care home here because I'm running back and forth. I've got Mark, my husband, needing help, Chris needing help, because I'm he's trying to get up, and I'm like, no, keep your foot elevated because we want to make sure the swelling goes down, and let's just pray that it's only a sprain, nothing worse. And so he's needing this, Mark's needing that. And I look over at my dog, and she starts limping, and I'm like, no, too much. The dog cannot be limping. She's fine. I think it was just because it's very cold here, and she'd been laying on the cold ground. But she does sometimes have a little issue. But anyhow, that just led me to thinking about how stressed. And when I get stressed as a caregiver, my entire jaw hurts and it like pops because I apparently learned this when my husband was initially in ICU, that I clench my jaws with stress and anxiety. So I know this is my issue, and, I do know ways to relieve it. Massage is a big way. And I have, dear friends of mine who help with that. And it got me to thinking, let's talk about this. Let's talk about stress and what it's like being a caregiver. Let's talk about some statistics on stress and the caregiver. And then let's just not ignore it. I mean, I think people don't like to talk about their feelings and their stress and how it affects us. And it affects us all in different ways. Some of us are stress eaters. Some of us are stop eating when we're stressed. Some of us clench our jaws. Some of us drink too much. There's so many different ways people address their stress. And let's look at ways that maybe are healthy ways to handle it. So, all right, that being said, let's talk about statistics on caregiver stress. And these are some stats that I pulled up. This came from the Family Caregiver Alliance. 40 to 70% of caregivers show significant symptoms of depression, and approximately 25 to 50% meet the diagnostic criteria for major depression. I've never been a person who's depressed, and I haven't been depressed through this. I've had, I think, moments of sadness, but have never gone into depression, thank God. But I do skew towards anxiety. And anxiety, I do not care for, and I do have a little happy pill that I take as needed for anxiety. And I want to tell you this, that I am like the most anti-medication person you will ever meet. But a year into all this, I had to say, give me something because I'm really stressing. Another statistic from AARP, caregivers are more likely to develop chronic conditions such as high blood pressure, heart disease, and diabetes due to prolonged stress. We certainly don't want to hear that as a caregiver. I don't like hearing that. And I'll be honest, it stresses me a little more when people say to me, and here I am saying it to all of y'all, that caregivers are more likely to develop these chronic conditions because they're under this prolonged stress. And I hate that because it does like lay on my mind, or kind of like weighs on my mind. And I don't want to stress y'all with it, but it is a fact. And I remember always telling people that, like take care of yourself, all this stuff. And when you are the caregiver, when you are in the thick of it, you're not really thinking about yourself completely. There's also, it's like you're never without stress. I don't know if there's a way to ever be without stress, because with my husband, I need him to get up and do some walking because that's good for him. He can walk some, but I'm afraid he's going to fall because he looks a little wobbly at times, and he's a very stubborn man and refuses to wear his leg brace, which would stabilize things. But he does things on his own terms. And so for me, at least he's up and walking. But then you've got that low level fear that, oh my gosh, is he going to fall? Is he going to get hurt? Is this going to happen? He has seizures, so sometimes I'm like, is he about to have a seizure? Because he also has what they call spasticity. So his arm and his leg will start doing this whole jiggy kind of thing. And our dog will go and lay on him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is she sensing a seizure coming on? And, you just go down this whole crazy rabbit hole. And so I just think there's no way, in my opinion, and if someone has found a way to not let this be the way it is for me, please let me know your secret. But I feel like I have been stressed since he had his strokes. I don't think there's any way not to have stroke. It's not like the high level of stress I was under in the beginning when we didn't know what was going to happen in prognosis and all of that. But it is a constant low level stress that has like little peaks in it, like when he's up walking or if he's getting sick or, things like that. So I don't know. So I see how caregivers do develop these conditions due to prolonged stress. And I mean, there's ways that we can address our stress, which we're going to talk about, but there's no way to make it go away completely. There's always going to be that level of stress. If you're caring for someone, whether it's, a stroke related, if it's Alzheimer's or whatever it may be, Parkinson's, whatever they have, you're always going to have that fear, I think, of, what's going to happen next. You try to live with it and just know that you're not in control of the situation. And who knows, maybe that's my problem, is that I do like to be in control of things. But honestly, I think that all of us caregivers, I don't think there's any way that we are ever stress-free. Another statistic is that 1 in 5 caregivers report their own health worsening due to caregiving responsibilities. All right, so let's talk about some signs of caregiver stress. Physical symptoms: fatigue, headaches, frequent illness, body aches, and weight changes. I would say of these, for myself, in the beginning, when Mark was in the hospital and everything was going on in the rehab, I had a lot of fatigue and a lot of headaches. Of course, fatigue because I wasn't sleeping, and probably headaches with that too, but also stress. And then I did lose 20 pounds, which that is, a highlight. I'm glad I didn't go the other way. So I am not a stress eater. I am a stress non-eater. So at least there's that. Number 2, for signs of caregiver stress, there can be emotional symptoms. So feelings of irritability, feelings of anger, guilt, anxiety, and depression. And if you're a caregiver, I'm going to bet you felt all of these at least once, maybe all at one time. I don't see how you wouldn't. I think it just goes with the territory. Behavioral changes, social withdrawal, unhealthy coping mechanisms like overeating, drinking, and neglecting your own personal health. So these would be things we need to watch for here. Cognitive issues, difficulty concentrating, memory problems, feeling overwhelmed. On this, I think I have found a way to combat the feeling overwhelmed. And for me, I just have to stop and think one task at a time, because it can be completely overwhelming when you're morning, before 8 o'clock in the morning, you've already helped someone get dressed, fed them, got their meds ready. You've done all this and you haven't even gotten yourself ready and out the door to work. So it is a lot. So you have to kind of stay in the moment. And I do find myself sort of talking to myself like, okay, that's done. I'm going to this task, and just trying not to think too far ahead, like too far ahead in the day. If there's 20 tasks you have to get done, well, let's just take it step by step. And then I kind of visualize in my head like a big check mark. That one's done. Moving on to the next. I feel like that helps me because it is very overwhelming if you think all the things that you have to get done, and then it can overwhelm you to where you're just like, I just don't want to do anything. And that's, none of us have the luxury of that. So just kind of, that's one way that personally I have been able to kind of figure my way through this. Again, is just to take each day, each task and break it down. For me, sometimes, which makes me irritable, kind of going back to some of these emotional symptoms, what makes me a little stressy feeling is that I own a business and I'm trying to run this business, and it is not a part-time business. This is a full-time plus business. And I am the only caregiver, sole provider of my family. We were not ready to retire when this happened. I was only 58. I have one kid still in college, and that, I'm paying for her college, and everything. When you become the caregiver, especially, talking as a husband and wife, everything's on me. The maintenance of the house, of the cars, of bills, financial, everything. And so it can become overwhelming, that you have all this is resting on your shoulders, right? And then you're trying to get to work. You've got your plan for the day, what you want to do. And then just by nature of being a caregiver, you don't know what's going to happen. And this is where I have to watch myself because I get very frustrated. If I have a plan for work, I want that plan to happen as I have it planned, right? If I have my week planned out, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And when something comes up, either, a caregiver cancels on you, or your caregiver, like my son, breaks his ankle or whatever he's done to it, and now he's needing care. Well, I missed an entire day of work yesterday because I had to make sure he was okay. And I'm not mad at him for it, of course, but it irritates me because I don't like to lose the momentum that I have going with my business. And like I said, I love what I do. I can't wait to come to work and do what I do. So everything from yesterday had to be rescheduled. And that frustrates me because I'm trying to run a business. I luckily have fantastic teammates who, anytime something like this happens, I can go, can you take this lead? Can you call this one? Can you do this? So we stay, everyone is covered. But all the other things that I'm trying to work on and do, it all goes to the back burner. And that's hard for me because I just want things to go the way I have put them on the calendar. And that is not the way of life, or it's not the way of caregiver life. So something for me that I've noticed, and this may be true, and I would bet it's true for most caregivers, is that if you're a caregiver who is still working also, is that it takes such Herculean strength to keep yourself, pull yourself up and motivate and stay focused, because these things happen and it's so frustrating and kind of you're just oh my gosh, I just want to get this done, right? And so you have to just find from somewhere deep down in yourself that willpower, that, just to just refocus, regrip, and just push on through and get everything done the next day. And so that's something that I find is stressful for me. But in those moments, like I said, of feeling really overwhelmed, just break it down to one task at a time. Don't think too far ahead. That's my best advice on stress and being the caregiver. So as I said, the effects of chronic stress on our bodies are not good. So it can cause, if you're with prolonged stress, it can lead to elevated cortisol levels, which can affect your immune system, affect your sleep patterns, and just your overall health. I have seen all of this myself. One thing that I personally do is, and not everyone believes in vitamins, but I do. And I make sure I'm taking all my vitamins, trying to eat well. I will go get a vitamin B12 shot, vitamin D shot. I did that all through when Mark was in the hospital in rehab because I was so afraid of getting sick, and I'm kind of prone to sinus infections. Chronic stress is also linked to higher risk of cardiovascular issues, digestive problems, and mental health challenges. Cardiovascular is always something for me personally I worry about because my dad died at 50 of a heart attack. Granted, he was a 3-pack-a-day smoker, so I am not, but it's still, someone to die that young, it does worry me. So with all of that said, I think we all know that getting enough sleep is crucial to our health. I think we need to, and I've said this before, we need to make sure that as a caregiver, and I know, and I've said this before, I know how hard it is as the caregiver to make it to our doctor's appointments because we're so busy taking care of our loved one and getting them to all their doctor's appointments and making sure they have all their medications and everything's been reordered and everything's organized in the pill boxes and all the stuff that we end up not taking care of ourselves because it's the easiest thing to do, right? Just to cancel that dentist appointment or cancel that physical. Don't do it. Make sure you are going and you are having all your tests done. So, check your blood pressure, your cholesterol, all those things. And I go once a year. I have it scheduled. When I leave, I make a schedule, schedule it for the next year out because I don't want to ever miss that because, I have higher cholesterol. So I have some issues with that myself that, concern me, but I just want to make sure I'm doing all the things I can do to make sure I'm healthy and that, I'm having all the tests and stuff done. So do that for yourself, even though I know it's the easiest thing in the world just to cancel on having your appointment. And, just Murphy's Law, something always happens when you have an appointment, right? That's when your caregiver is going to cancel or your loved one is sick or something has happened. But, have a backup plan and have a backup caregiver or family member, someone who can be there so you can make your appointment. Some other ways to sort of address and manage caregiver stress, and these are things that I have found have helped me. So I'm going to share with y'all. Building a support network. Share your experience, with someone else. Share what you're going through. There are support groups that you can go to in person. And I will say there's a lot more, especially where I am in the Dallas area, there's a lot of dementia support groups. I wouldn't say I found like specific stroke support groups, but I have found those online and I find them very helpful. I don't go on every day because it tends to make me feel kind of sad because, even though our situation is not, it's not the greatest, it could be so much worse than, and when I read some of the stories that other people are going through, it breaks my heart, quite honestly, and it makes me, feel a little bit stressed for them. But so I can't go on it every day, but I will check in maybe like once a week because someone might post something that is exactly how I was feeling. And, there's a lot of things as caregivers we don't want to say out loud. And, when we're like, gosh, am I terrible to have that thought? And you are not, because they're just thoughts. We're all going to have thoughts. And it's interesting when you see someone else write it down, usually anonymously on on the Facebook group, but for them to share it and you see everyone going, yeah, I felt like that too. I think that's helpful. And then you don't have that guilt, like, why did I have that thought that, I'm really terrible for thinking that, but you were not. So find some way to be able to get your feelings out and talk about how you feel, whether it's through, another caregiver, a good friend, even, seeking out professional services with a psychiatrist or psychologist, someone who can maybe help you figure some coping skills. I actually recently went to a therapist because a friend suggested that maybe I should just, for some stress. And so I went and I talked. And at the end, she told me I had really good coping skills. And then I paid $195 and left. And then that kind of was upsetting to me. But anyhow, good news is I have some good coping skills. So I don't think I need to go for therapy. Another thing to help manage your stress is prioritize your self-care. And that's exercise, eat well, get adequate sleep. Exercise, that's a struggle for me. And I'm really going to try and get off that struggle bus. It's just like finding the time, which that's a cop-out. I'll admit that right now. Okay, I said it, and I know instead of sitting there binging on Netflix, I could get on my little exercise bike thing. So yeah. So see, I just made an excuse. I busted myself in front of y'all. So I am going to prioritize self-care starting tomorrow, maybe tonight, and eat well. Don't just eat junk food. Get adequate sleep, like I said. And that's hard to do as a caregiver. I get it. But what I find is sometimes, and my daughter did this for me this weekend, and it was so wonderful. I happened to fall asleep in her bed. She lives in an apartment by her college, but she was home. And I fell asleep in her bed and she didn't wake me up. And so she went and took care of her dad, made sure he had his medication, got him tucked in, took care of our dog, did all the stuff. And I woke up at 4 a.m. I didn't know where I was, who I was, and I felt fantastic because I'd had such good, solid sleep. So something like that, if someone can be there, a family member or caregiver, and let you get some good sleep or be able to like take a little mini vacation over the weekend. Meditation personally works for me, and just relaxation kind of techniques, which I have learned through my good friends at Lakeside Wellness. I just gave them a shout out. I'm going to have them on to talk about some of this stuff because they really have helped me a lot. Melissa and Livia over there, they've been great. And then also things like, maybe journaling. That's something that helps me. Or, maybe walking your dog. Walking my dog, unfortunately, she's kind of crazy and she needs some. She's not really crazy. She's a really good dog, but she's huge and she's very excitable and she's a golden retriever and she is hard to walk. So she needs a little bit of obedience school. I still need to schedule that. need to do that soon. She's almost 3. Respite care, if you're able to take your loved one in for a respite care, some assisted livings do that. But of course there's, that's involves money. It involves usually a 2-week time period, but that's one thought, unless there's family that can come and stay with them. And as I said, join some support groups to talk to people who are feeling exactly like you feel, the professional help. And just also, I think here's a good one for y'all. Set boundaries. Learn to say no. I used to have a really hard time saying no. I would say yes to everything. I was cookie mom in Girl Scouts. I didn't want to be cookie mom. I was working full time, but I was cookie mom. It was a lot of work. I was on the PTA. I volunteered for everything before I could stop myself. Nobody was volunteering, and I would hear myself go, I'll do it. And then I'm like, why did I just do that? So I've gotten pretty good at that as I've gotten older. So set those boundaries and say no to doing certain things. And then just focus on just small joys. And being a caregiver, there are moments of joy. There are moments that are just hysterically funny, things that happen. A lot of ours involve our dog because she just amuses us so much. She's hooked on pup cups now from Starbucks. And so when I go get Mark his coffee, if I don't get a pup cup, she is just looking and smelling because she recognizes the smell of coffee, and she's now associated it with pup cups. And so it just brings such joy to us whenever we give her one of these. And especially Mark, he just smiles just ear to ear. And so it's just, that's a fun little easy thing, a little joy. So kind of in closing, I just want to say, there's nothing wrong with you if you are stressed as a caregiver. That is just there. I don't honestly, like I said before, I don't think there's any way to not always be at a low level stress as a caregiver, because your person that you are taking care of, that you love so much, you feel responsible. I'm responsible for Mark, that he's getting his medication, he's going to the doctor, all those things. It's a huge responsibility. And I think if you didn't feel some low level of stress about it, I just don't know that you'd be doing it right. I don't know. And correct me if I'm wrong. If someone out there has found a way to have no stress as a caregiver, I want to know. So anyhow, as I said before, find some ways to help you with your stress, whether that's journaling or maybe going for a massage or just hiring a caregiver for 4 hours a day, once a week or once a month or whatever you can afford, or having a family member come sit so you can go out and go to the grocery store by yourself, or just go do something. Just go sit in your garden if that makes you happy, whatever that may be. Do something. And just remember, you are not alone. There are many of us out there serving along with you, and we are all just doing our best, right? Things are going to come up. Things are never going to be super easy. Kind of things never go as planned is sort of my motto. So I'm never really surprised anymore when things don't go as planned. My friend Melissa said to me last night when I saw her, she said, God loves you very much. And I do believe he does love me very much. She said it in a way, it was just funny how she said it, because, it's like things just constantly feel put on me, and my strength and is my faith in God. That is, and I know everyone's not spiritual or religious or whatever it may be, but for me, that has also been a huge factor in helping me, is that I believe in God, and I believe that God is supporting me through this, because there's no way I'm getting through this on my own. But as Melissa said, God loves me very much, and she's like, and the smile never leaves your face. And I think that's great, because I would hate to end up being a sad and bitter person, because honestly, I like to have fun, I like to laugh, and I like to smile. And I feel like Buddy the Elf saying that, but smiling makes me happy. I really do enjoy just having fun and being happy and staying positive and not going negative. So remember, there are resources out there to help you. There are different support groups available. If you can't get to one in person, go look on Facebook. Go look up alzheimers.org. Go look up, if you're a stroke caregiver, there's stroke caregiver support groups. There's one that is specifically for wives, stroke survivors. So go check that out. Tons of podcasts. There's my podcast. Of course, we have covered many topics. Listen to that. There's other podcasts out there that are about caregiving, about aging, blogs that give you insight on caregiving. And of course, I wrote my book, Surrounded by Love, which I hope is helping other people on the same kind of journey. And the story is more about early on in our journey of Mark's stroke and coming to terms and learning to be an advocate and being a caregiver. I will give you a little secret that I am working on a second book that is all about being a caregiver and what I have learned and what I continue to learn and what others around me, other caregivers have shared with me. So I'm real excited about that. It is, of course, one of those things that I'm trying to find the time to get to it and finish writing it. But this year it will be published. I'm putting it out there. So y'all hold me to it. Anyhow, please be sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review, share this episode with someone if you think it might benefit them, if they are a caregiver and you're trying to offer them some support. And you can find all of the podcast on my website, which is loriwilliams-seniorservices.com. And thank you so much for listening. I do want to leave you, caregivers, just with this quote, which I'm sure everyone has heard, but it's, you can't pour from an empty cup, so take care of yourself so you can care for others. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.